Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to make a video on what I need to read for the course I'm taking. For those of you who don't know, I'm currently taking a literature course with focus on the older literature. So we're reading everything from as early as mankind has written up until 1910-ish. We have read a bit of things that are after 1910 as well, but those were mainly in the beginning of the course. So it consists of 4 units and it's over a year, so it's not too much and doesn't go into too much detail. But I am on unit 2 right now, and unit 1 was really fun. We did a lot of fun things. So for this course we have gotten 3 pages worth of books to read, and these are we don't need to read all of these books that are listed here, but I own most of the books, unless they are poems or short stories or something that I couldn't get my hands on. I don't have them, and some I own as ebooks as well, so that's why I don't have some of them here. So I'm going to show you the ones that I do have here, and I probably won't. Okay. And I probably won't bring up the ones I don't have or the ones I have as ebooks unless I know that I'm required to read them, because I just got into unit 2 and that's when I learned that first of all I don't need most of these books, because most of these texts are actually in a much bigger compiled book, so I didn't need to spend all the money on buying every single individual book, but that's fine because I want to read all of them anyway at some point. But then I also realized that we don't actually read all of them, so that was a bit stupid of me. But again, I don't mind because I'm most likely going to read all of them at some point anyway. So that's just, if you're wondering why there are so many books, we're not going to read all of them in their entirety. It's just I bought most of them just to have them. Also, most of them are in English, even if I'm Swedish, because I prefer reading things in English. It makes it so much easier for me. I don't know why. I think it's because I lived in England for 4.5 years, I think it was. Yeah, around 4 years at least. So I think that's why, and I read so much in English anyway. Like on my spare time I mostly read English or books in English, so it just makes it easier for me to understand and comprehend everything. So I also don't think Swedish translations are always too good, and I just prefer them in English. So yeah, so the video will be divided into 4 different parts, 1 for each unit, and I will go through them from unit 1 until the last unit. So starting off with unit 1, we did basically get into the basics. So the very first thing we did was just read a normal faculty literature book about like kind of the ground terms of literature, I guess you could call it. And then we moved on to drama analysis. So we got to choose between 2 different plays for this. One was A Dream Play by August Strindberg, he's a Swedish author, and also Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. As you can probably tell, I chose Oedipus Rex mostly because I'm not a big fan of Strindberg. I never have been, and I never really quite understood him, even if I have read him in Swedish. For those of you who don't know, I'm Swedish. Even with reading him in Swedish, I think he's very weird and very complex of an author, so I tend to avoid him at all costs. But I did read the play and I think I gave it 2 stars, maybe 3 stars. I just thought it was very weird and all over the place, and it didn't make much sense to me, so I went for Oedipus Rex, which I gave 5 stars because it's now one of my favourite plays of all time. So for unit 2 we are doing everything from ancient times up until, so here's the reading list. with every book that I have for Unit 2, and I will tell you if I need to read them or not. So the very first thing we did for Unit 2 was a drama analysis on Medea by Euripides. I cannot find the book for this. I own the book, I have it somewhere, but I cannot find it for the life of me right now, so sorry about that. Moving on, right now what we're doing as I'm recording this is a comparison kind of between the Bible, which I also don't have here because I read it online, and the Odyssey by Homer. And it's not we're not doing like an analysis of the similarities between the two, but we are in a way, but not like story related. It's very interesting looking at the Bible from a new perspective, which is fun for me at least. Then for part 3 of this unit we have a lot of smaller readings, so we are reading parts of these books, we're not reading the whole thing for these, so don't worry. So the first one we have is the Decameron by Boccaccio. I'm not Italian, but this is a really thick book, so I'm really happy we're not reading all of it, even if I do want to read all of it because it sounds really intriguing and really fun. And then we're reading parts of Pantagruel, I'm fairly sure it is. Again, I will read the whole book at some point just to get into it more. And then we're reading parts of the Divine Comedy from Inferno, which is book 1. And I actually really am excited to read this because I think it'll be quite fun, because I've heard so much about it and I'm really excited to actually get into it and actually read it and analyze it from a different point of view. And then we have some in my very big book. So this book I was talking about before, where I have most of my readings in here actually, at least for Unit 2 and some for Unit 3 and 4 as well, but most of the things that we are reading is in here. I have tabbed it all up, so that's why it's a bit tabbed up. So we are also reading Voluspa, I think that's how you say it in English. It's a Icelandic tale, I'm fairly sure it's French. It's either Icelandic or French, I think that is Icelandic. And then we have Gunnlaug Ormström. Then we have, I'm going to say this in Swedish because I do not know for the life of me what it's called in English. Gunnlaug Ormstungas saga. That's an Icelandic tale, I'm fairly sure though. We are reading some things by Margaret of Navarre, which is really interesting. I love reading things by women, especially from this kind of time period, like the medieval time period is where we are now. Then we're also reading a few things by Francesco Petrarca. I know it's a few letters and a few poems, I think, but there's at least a few letters in there that we need to read. Then we also need to read some things from Gaspara Stampa, which will be interesting. And then for the last part of the Unit 2, we're doing a Renaissance thing. So we are either doing Hamlet or The Tempest by Shakespeare, or we can do a Swedish female writer, which I think I am going to do. I'm not sure yet which I'm going to do. So the other one, it's called Beskrivning över mitt elände och mycket vedervärdiga vandringstid, which kind of translates very roughly now because it's all Swedish and I can't even think right now, but kind of like an explanation over my suffering and my long journey, kind of. I think this is a kind of diary thing, so that's why it's also a bit weird. I'm really interested to read this because it's made by or written by a female. I think it's again very interesting to read females from this time period. And then a few things that are on the list for Unit 2 but that we're not reading, I'm just going to bring them up anyway because I own the books, are Don Quixote. This is a really thick one, so I'm happy we're not reading all of it for the 2 weeks that we are actually studying this part, like the medieval part. But I will read this at some point because I've heard it's one of the best books ever made, along with a few others. Then we have three from the like ancient times, and the first one is Einai by Virgilius. This is the Swedish cover. I actually love this cover. It's so nice. I don't know, I just think it looks really nice. Metamorphoses by Ovid. I have tabbed this up because I thought we were gonna read this, or I was gonna be ahead of schedule and read it all, but then we were not meant to, so now it's still tabbed up when I read it at some point. And then we have had some poems by Catullus, along with some other ancient people. Moving on to Unit 3, which is all about the part from 1700 until 1830, and it's called Truth, Freedom and Individuality. For most of these books, as far as I'm aware, we're going to read the whole thing if we do get tasked with reading them, which is fine, because this is when I kind of thrive, because from the 1700s and up until 1900s, this is when my favorite classics come into this. So starting off, we have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I absolutely love this cover. I have so many versions of Frankenstein, but this I think is my favorite. Or maybe the Swedish one I have, because that's also really nice, but this is one of my favorites anyway. And then we have my favorite, who's been stalking me this whole time, The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm so hoping we get to analyse Edgar Allan Poe, because I've already read Fall of the House of Usher. Absolutely loved it. I absolutely love and adore Edgar Allan Poe. He's one of my favourite writers of all time. And I own so many books of just Poe, like it's insane how many books I own of Poe. I also have Annabel Lee framed back there behind my flowers. I don't think it's up right now because the book fell down. But I do have it framed back there because it's my favourite poem of his by far. So I really hope you get to read this and analyse it, because I can never have too much poem. And then we have some poems by John Keats. So I just bought this gorgeous little book. I can't remember the publisher right now, but anyways, I have Poe in this as well. Surprise, surprise. Moving on, we have The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffmann. I have already read this and I absolutely loved it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. It was really nice, and it's kind of a gothic tale. I absolutely love this, and again, I hope we get to... It would be really nice to do a comparison between this and The Fall of the House of Usher, because I think that it would be a really nice thing to compare. Then we have Suffering of Young Werther, I think it's called in English, by William Goethe. I call him Goethe. I'm Goethe? English? I don't know what his name is in English. Sorry. Then we have some poems by William Blake, but I have the full thing. It's really thick. And yes, I am intending on reading all of this at some point. And then we have Candide by Voltaire. Then we have Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And this would just be book 4 in this, but I'll most likely read the whole thing because it's not too much. It's like, what, 200 pages? 300 pages. Oh well. Short read. Then we have Tartuffe by Molière. I'm sorry if I said Tartuffe wrong, but I am not French. And I took German in school, so I don't speak French. And then to finish off, we have Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Again, not all of these will be read in their entirety or at all, but these are just the ones I own for now. So we'll see what actually happens, but those are like on my literature list, and again, I will be reading all of them at some point anyway, preferably during the unit, just so that I could compare if I wanted to. Moving on to Unit 4, it will be all from the 1830s up until 1910, and it's subtitled Reality, Dream and Future. So in this we have quite a lot of books, again, Not gonna read all of them, not gonna read full things, but again, these are what I have. So I have this, it's Fireplace by Anton Chekhov, but we have been assigned The Cherry Orchard in our literature list. Then I have Notes from the Underground and The Gambler by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I am so bad at Russian. I'm so sorry if there are any Russians out there watching me. We are reading Notes from the Underground for this. Then we have two more Strindberg, and it is Giftas and also The Red Room. And then we have a Swedish author, which is Selma Lagerlöf. She's a really famous Swedish author, like one of our most famous Swedish authors. She used to be on our 20 bill thing, 20 crown bill, but she's not anymore. Now it's Astrid Lindgren. Astrid Lindgren, it's so weird saying Swedish. But if you're familiar with Pippi Longstocking, she's the one who wrote those. Selma is not, sadly not too well known in English, but I've heard lots of good things and I always wanted to read her. So this is Gösta Berling's saga. Really interested to actually read her. I've heard lots of amazing things of her. Then we have Therese Raquin by Emily Sola. Then we have The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I'm really excited to read this. It's a really short book. I think it's around 50 pages, something, 30, 50. And I've heard so many good things about this, and I'm really excited to actually read this finally. It's been on my TBR for years since I first heard about it, but I've never actually picked it up. I probably should, because it's such a short one, so I could read it in one sitting. And then I have a book with Full Place by Ibsen. I think his first name is Henrik, or Henry. I think it's Henrik, because it's Norwegian. We are reading A Doll's House from this. Then we have Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Again, a collection of poems, which is really thick, by Walt Whitman. Then we have The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. And we have Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Again, I'm not French. And we have Old Man Goyot by Henri de Balzac. And finishing off, we have probably the one I'm most excited to read is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I'm really hoping we do get to read and analyse Jane Austen, because I do be loving Mr. Darcy. I mean, who doesn't? Which woman who has ever seen or read Pride and Prejudice is not wanting to be Mrs. Darcy? Just say it. I think we all want to be Mrs. Darcy. But I really hope we get to read this. It's one of the ones that I'm most excited to read. So that was all the books I have. Again, there are a lot of books. Not a lot of books. There are some books that I don't own, or that I have as ebooks. And also there are some just poems where it's just like saying, oh, one poem. So I haven't gotten a full book of poems, unless the poet itself, or unless the poet has interested me in some way. I haven't gone out of my way to get a full collection of poems to just potentially have one poem, especially not when I have it in a really thick book filled with things. But anyway, so that was my full literature list. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below if you liked it, and if you want to see more things like this, or more updates on what I read and when and what I thought. For those of you watching this when this is coming out, on Wednesday, I will have a November wrap up, and then on Sunday we start the Vlogmas thing. So I'm really excited for that, to share my readings every week and like my preparations for Christmas and everything. So I really hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, till next time, bye guys.